Hey guys, wherever you are, I want to say good day to you and welcome to FTT 111. Firearms Inspection and Troubleshooting is a great class, and this is going to be a good class, guys. This course is information rich and it provides us with a host of knowledge that we can take back and apply in our professional lives. And throughout this course, you are going to hear me say that several times: professionalism, firearms professionals. Because what I want you guys to start doing, especially in this class, is to start to train your mind. Train your mind that you are becoming and that you are a firearms professional. And as firearms professionals, it is incumbent upon us to understand that we are the stewards. We are that ground level. We are the first line of defense when it comes to ensuring that firearms are safe, operable, and effective tools. And speaking of tools, I got a good friend, and he always tells us, guys, you can do any job as long as you have the right tools. And as a firearms professional, not only is it going to be incumbent upon you to understanding your role and responsibilities, but you also going to have the right tools. And you're going to have to know what tools to have. You're going to have to know how to use those tools. And more importantly, you're going to have to know when to use those tools.
Some of the more common items I keep on my bench, very, very handy for me, always include a knife. Got a bench block here, punch set. Got a very robust hex set or Allen key, whatever you want to call them, hex set. I keep those around. Bore snakes just in case I need to clean. Also got some measurement tools here, note-taking tools, some specialty wrenches also, just in case I need those on the fly. So these are some of the tools that you will need.
I've been teaching in the private sector for over 10 years now, and a lot of times we have to diagnose issues, troubleshooting. We have to diagnose issues on the fly. And sometimes you have to use those tools that you have, right? So understanding, not only understanding the tool, but understanding the uses of that tool is going to be very important, because sometimes you have to get creative. Recently, I was in need of a bench block. I was doing some armorer's work and I was in need of a bench block. I was in a pinch. So I had to run up to Academy Sports, and this just popped in my mind. I ran up to Academy Sports. I bought several hockey pucks. I came home and I took a nice size drill bit and I drilled a hole dead through the center of that hockey puck. And I ended up with some bench blocks, some very good bench blocks, by the way, because they're non-marring, and we can talk about that later. But sometimes, guys, you have to get creative, but you can't get creative if you don't know what you need. So as a firearms professional, gaining that body of knowledge to understand what tools you need is going to be big. It's going to be big. And you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive tools. What I want you to do is I want you to go out and I want you to get the most effective tools. What will work? What won't work? Use your firearms professionalism to make that determination. Now, as you may surmise from the title of the course, we will be troubleshooting firearms. And troubleshooting firearms is basically diagnosing what issues are, diagnosing the root cause of the issue, and fixing those issues. Now, will you be able to fix all issues that arise? No, you may not be able to fix all issues that arise. But as the firearms professional, it is incumbent upon us to at least be able to diagnose those issues and find out what the root cause is. Now, is it the gun? Is it the ammunition? Is it the shooter? And I've got an extra one. Is it what the shooter does to the gun? If the guy sprays spray paint on the gun because he wants it a different color, will the gun cycle? Chances are no. I'm speaking from experience. I had a client that brought in a firearm and told us that the gun wouldn't cycle. We took one look at it and asked him who spray painted the gun. That was a very, very, very simple and easy diagnosis, but this is what we have to do. Now, what do you do in that case, right? Well, in that case, if you use a solvent to get the spray paint off, then are you damaging the finish to the gun? Are you damaging components to the gun? You have to understand what's going on when you're diagnosing these issues, when you're troubleshooting. It's important that we are able to effectively troubleshoot and diagnose these issues as they arise. And Understand, guys, as a professional, sometimes you may have to troubleshoot on the range. Sometimes you may have to troubleshoot in your shop. Sometimes you may have to troubleshoot on the fly. But you have to troubleshoot nonetheless. And that process is going to start and end with being safe. That process is going to start and end with being safe. I don't know any other way of expressing the importance of troubleshooting other than saying this. If we are able to effectively troubleshoot, then we can by ourselves cut down on a significant number of accidents and things that happen with firearms that aren't intentional. But we have to be able to be effective in our duties.
Now, one of the first things that we always want to do is take a good inspection of the interior parts of any firearm. Now, if we're taking a look at the semi-automatic pistol, then we would, of course, have the basic 4 parts. And we want to take a look inside of the slide assembly, make sure no edges are peened over on those rails or anything like that. Make sure nothing is poking or protruding out. Make sure we have no chips in the metal. We're also going to take a look at the barrel. Look at that barrel hood. Make sure that is intact. Make sure the feed ramp has no issues. You also want to take a look down the interior of the bore. Make sure that you can see no issues with that rifling. All right, that's going to be very important for safe and effective shooting. Also want to take a look at the crown. Is the crown intact? Make sure nothing is wrong with that crown. All right, you can visually inspect your guide rod and recoil spring. Now, when you take a look at the frame, you want to make sure that there are no issues with the rail so the slide is not impeded in its function. You also want to take a look down in the internal components, look through the mag well, look through that trigger assembly.
And remember, guys, these things go hand in hand. Troubleshooting, inspecting, safety evaluations, function checks, these things go hand in hand. And it's going to be very important that you guys understand how to effectively inspect a firearm. Like I told you, I've been teaching in the private sector over a decade, better part of the last decade, a little bit more. And before we allow anyone onto the range with their own firearm, we conduct an inspection on it. And this inspection is not just a look over. This is a very detailed inspection. And as firearms professionals, I would expect that you guys are going to do the same thing. Now, if someone comes to you with a gun that's made in 1900 and it's held together, the grip of it is held together with duct tape and they got some bubble gum in there holding things together, chances are this gun is not safe. And your inspection is going to reveal that. And we get that all the time as firearms professionals. People want us to make sure that certain specific firearms are safe. And understanding what to look for, understanding what things should look like, understanding internal components, external components is going to be of paramount importance. And classes like this FTT 111 are going to help provide you with those necessary tools and that necessary skill to be able to do that. But it's going to take some work, guys, and it's going to take some thought-provoking conversations in order to get you guys to the point to where you can effectively get out here and troubleshoot and inspect these firearms. But just like if we can effectively troubleshoot, if we're able to effectively inspect firearms, and not only inspect them, but look out for the things that aren't safe and make sure that the things that should be safe are working the way that they should be. If we're able to do that effectively, once again, guys, we can cut down on the number of accidents and things like that that occur. But we have to be effective in our duties. Like I told you guys, these things go hand in hand. Being able to effectively troubleshoot, being able to effectively inspect, go right in hand with conducting safety checks or function checks. Some people call them function checks, but these have to be done effectively. And more especially, they have to be done effectively before we hand over any firearm to that owner. As firearms professionals, they expect us to give them a working firearm. Whenever we're done with whatever we're doing to it, they expect us to give them a working firearm. And the only way that we can do that is by safety checks and function checks. And this will be done both in the shop as well as on the range, because there will have to be some live fire to make sure that those 8 cycles of operation are effective and that they are in working order. The majority of it may be in the shop, where you're checking the components of that firearm to ensure that they are safe. Does that firearm have an empty mag well safety to where it will not fire if there's no magazine in it? Does the slide lock back on an empty magazine? Should it lock back on an empty magazine? These are all things that we would need to know before we can give that firearm back to its owner in safe working condition.
It's going to be very important that we understand and we really have a good knowledge base about the functions and the features of the firearms that we are working on. This example, we'll be taking a look at the safety features and the functions of the Taurus Millennium G2 PT 111. After a successful reassembly, we'll go ahead and rack the slide a couple of times just to make sure the pistol should be in working order before we check the functions. Now, we can insert an empty magazine, and what we want to do is check the safety. So we put the safety into the on position and try to press the trigger. If the trigger is not pressed, it means that the safety is working. Take the safety off, and now we try to press the trigger. If the trigger actually engages, then we are in working order. Go ahead and rack the slide back and see if the slide does lock on an empty magazine. If it does, we are good to go.
As I told you guys, I haven't seen every firearm in the world. But what I can do is research that firearm and find out the ins and outs about it. There's several resources that we can use on the web that provide owner's manuals for firearms that date back to years that we can't even think about. All we have to do is use our resources, guys. Again, remember, let's put as many tools in our toolbox as we can. But not just tools, effective tools. Now, there's a class that I teach here. It lasts about 2 hours, and it's all about cleaning. I know you guys are thinking, well, what does cleaning have to do with what we're talking about? But at the very end of the course, what we do is a safety check. We do a function check. And we go through that gun from the rooter to the tutor. I'm telling you, and we're making sure that the gun is safe to operate before I give that gun back over to the citizen or to the client or to my friend or family member whenever they're going home. And we're checking everything out to make sure that it is operable. And then we'll go to the range and we'll fire 2 or 3 magazines through it to make sure that it is operable before we give it back. These are effective safety and function checks. And as firearms professionals, again, it is hoped and expected that we are as thorough and we are as effective as we can when we are completing this specific step. Because this is the last thing that we're going to do, hopefully, before we give that firearm back to its owner. Now, I wouldn't be me if I didn't provide you guys just with some little thought-provoking questions that may lead you into a whole nother realm of thought paradigm. Now, as a firearms professional, is there any time that you can see where you can skip one of these steps, where you can skip the troubleshooting step, where you can skip the inspections, where you can skip the safety and function checks? Is there a time where you can skip that? I'd like to know, is there a time where you can skip that? Likewise, as a firearms professional, and this is a good one. As a firearms professional, guys, if you are inspecting a firearm and you deem it to be unsafe, how do you present that information to the owner? Now, remember, a lot of you may be like me who owns several firearms, and I'm sentimental about all of mine. I love them all. They're all my children. And I don't want to hear anything bad about my children. So how do you handle that as the professional? Because remember, guys, at some point, this is a business. So how do you handle those types of situations? Just something to get your thought process moving about this firearms profession. Just a little bit to get you moving. Again, welcome to FTT 111, Firearms Inspection and Troubleshooting. Glad to have you. Let's get to work.